Good afternoon. Welcome to Eretz Israel. It's a beautiful afternoon. It's not to be believed. It's in the 60s in the end of January. It's unheard of. Maybe there's something to this global change of weather. It's certainly been prophesied about that the weather will be frenetic. It will be unstable. It will be changeable all the time in the days of the redemption. And the redemption, of course, we understand it as to be the freedom from the bonds that keep us from becoming our true selves. The bonds of our earthly self, the bonds of our unfriendly neighbors, the bonds of old ideas about who we are. All of that is part of exile. But we're in a redemption here. Look at this place, look at this land, these mountains, these trees. This has all been redeemed over hundreds and hundreds of years. The Jews have been coming back. Now, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai opens up in Parshat Vayera a very interesting Torah about Rachel and Leah, the two of the great women of Israel, and how they represent other realms, both in the story of their lives and also the upper manifestation of the entire cosmos. And so he's going to explain, this is a famous verse from Yirmiyahu who prophesies the destruction of the temple for 40 years. Not a day, not a week, 40 years, howling in the streets, the prophecies of the destruction of the temple. And, well, I don't know how many listened. There were those, though. I'm told that the Yemenite Jews fled early. They said, well, you're going to be destroyed here. We're going to go south to the beach, and they survived the destruction, and they weren't part of the complete destruction of the temple. But nonetheless, this voice is heard in the heights. The heights always is in heaven as well as earth. The voice is heard. There will be a bitter crying. Rachel mivakeh al banea, and Rachel is crying over her children. That's a beautiful, famous verse. But the Zohar, of course, in its inimicable way, asks the question, this pasuk is applied to many cases in the history of Israel, not just the destruction of the temple, but this verse still has a difficulty. Rachel is crying for her children, Banav Yosef and Binyamin. She only has two children in Am Yisrael, Binyamin and Yosef. Havu lo yatir, v'Leah shit shivatin, havu dilah. Leah had 6 children. V'may bacha Rachel v'lo Leah. And why did Rachel cry for? Is the mother that cries? And Leah wasn't the mother crying for her children that would be going out to exile for 2,000 years and be scattered all along this giant planet. Ella, hachiamu, rather the rabbis teach, it's written, Leah rakota, Leah's eyes were soft. Why were Leah's eyes soft? What kind of phrase is that, soft eyes? It sounds pretty, It sounds like, a pleasant appearance. My rakota, the Zohar asks, why soft? Because every day she would go out and ask people, have you seen Esav? Do you know what he's up to? Because she knew she was destined to marry Esav in the beginning of the formation of this nation. And she knew that was part of the destiny that was written for her. Now understand that all of us have a destiny and all of us have an ability to edit that destiny. And Leah was determined to change her destiny because she heard and they would tell her what the evil Russia Esav was doing with people and pillaging and plundering and all the other P's that you can do. And she was afraid of falling into his lottery, into his lot, into his being his wife. She didn't want it. So if God wanted, why didn't she do it? She said, no, I want to marry a tzaddik. I want to marry a righteous man. I don't want to marry this evil guy that's going along doing everything he can to take advantage of the world instead of to give to the world? Because that's really the difference between a Rasha and a tzaddik. A tzaddik wants to give to the world and make it better, and the Rasha wants to take from the world and, worry about making it better later. And she didn't want his portion. So you see, Leah had this holy chutzpah to go out and tell God, I'm going to cry and pray until something happens. And she would cry every day until her eyes were softened. She cried and did not stop until, the reality happened at the wedding of her sister Rachel, that she got to marry the tzaddik Yaakov first. And that was the sign, the switch that her prayer caused. So the miracle was a mere switch, fueled, of course, directed by Lavan, her unrighteous father. Now, that's the setup of the story. The Zohar, as always, will take that story and use it to teach us about the relationship of heaven to earth, about the Shekhinah, the divine presence, and about the master, what we call the infinite being, that we can't even know anything about him except that he is, that he exists, and that he has names. And so the Zohar tells us, V'kucha b'richu amar, but God said, Ant bachat begin hahu tzedikah. God said, well, you cried for that righteous person, for Yaakov. She wanted to marry him. That you would not become beholden and part of the family of Esav, who became eventually the nation of Rome, which was known for more bloodshed than any other nation. Hayecha, well, on your life, achatech takum beParshat Orchin, your sister, because you went out and prayed for the tzaddik, your sister will go out on the road. Rachel. She will go out on the road when? When do we see this? V'tivkei al galutehon d'Israel, and she will cry about the children of Israel in exile. In other words, you cried for the tzaddik, and so your sister will cry for the children of the tzaddik. Where? On the road through Beit Lechem. On the road through Beit Lechem, we know the famous story that Rachel died in childbirth and she was buried there. On the road that would lead outside the land. And you will bring up a nation, but you won't cry about it. From your antecedents, from your genetic material, from your love and the dedication, a nation will be born, but you won't cry over them. But Rachel, your sister, will cry about the Jews in exile. So what is this teaching us? That there is this level of the hiddenness. Leah is within. The Zohar is going to teach us that Leah was buried deep in the cave of Marat Machpelah in Hebron, where no one would see and know this great person was buried there to begin with. Of course, afterwards, Hortus, Herod built a giant monument over the patriarchs to honor their grave. But in the beginning, it was a far-off place. No one went through there. Whereas Rachel was buried in the middle of the intersection of the eastern world, on Beit Lechem, which is between the sea and between the road to Ammon, the road to Babylon, the road to Damascus. So anybody came through here went out past Beit Lechem, because then the mountains go down to the sea and across, etc., on the north side of the Yam HaMelech, of the Salt Sea. So you see, Rachel was buried in a place, an open public place, in order that she would experience and be part of that idea of the exile, the revealed Jews, the Jews that go out to exile, the Jews that spread all over this planet, trying to teach and live by the Torah, trying to fulfill the word and the will and the commandments of God. And Leah was off in a cave, far away from the madding crowd. What is this teaching us? Rachi bachat. As we know, Rachel cried about them. But the secret, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai tells us that Rachel and Leah are two worlds in each of us, the revealed self and the hidden self. Then we all have this. And sometimes our hidden gets revealed and sometimes our revealed gets hidden. But we still have a public self and a private self. Well, why is that important? Well, certainly we need to know how to manage the situation of because there's a hidden world, the one we don't see, the one we don't smell, the one it's hard to taste and touch, and the world that we experience through all our senses. But don't ever think that one is so far from the other. The Gemara says they're 3 fingers apart. 3 fingers from your eyes, the world to come begins, the spiritual realm. So what does that teach us? That it's not physical, so it doesn't take up space, so we can be very close. It can be just on the other side of the curtain of your consciousness. That's where it is. And it's over there waiting for us. And that's how, the spirits, the souls, if you go to the graveyard or you go to pray for your relatives or go to the tzaddikim, they're not so far, except we can't really measure space when it comes to between heaven and earth because it's a metaphoric distance. But it's telling us it's really very close if we have the belief and the power of belief to penetrate the veil. Right? And Leah's buried over there in the cave. And that is the way it is above. That Leah, the mother Leah, is in a higher realm than Rachel in the upper worlds as well. And you might think that that's some kind of indication of a lesser level reached spiritually. I don't think that's the teaching at all. Rather, she went into the cave with Jacob and no other place. Well, Rachel went out to the derech to Efrat, Beit Lechem, and did not go into the city. So you see, there was one of them was buried in the city and one of them was buried in the country. And this is also a dichotomy of what it is to be a Jew, that sometimes we have to be city people and sometimes we have to be country people. And Yaakov, of course, knew with Ruach HaKodesh where his wives should be buried. That's a very important thing. But I think, Rabbi Nachman teaches that if you're the son of the king, then you can see through all the veils. In the story of the lost princess, the viceroy goes to look for the daughter of the king, and he comes to a palace of water. What is a palace of water? It sounds like a theme park, right? You walk through the walls of water and you get to the pot of gold in the middle. Well, in this case, the metaphor is that the divine presence is so deep inside your soul that it's like going through walls of water to get there. However, if you know that you're the daughter or the son of the king, you're not afraid. You're not afraid of the poison arrows. You're not afraid of the evil in the world. You're not afraid of the future because you know the king. You know the master of creation, and you know that it's all good and it's getting better. And it's going to keep getting better. Even as bad as the news may look, don't pay attention. That's just people who don't see the other side of the veil. But when you do, and you see, and you know that inside the water is your true divine spark, inside those walls of water, you will follow through it, and you go through unharmed. You will come out and understand what it is to be the princess or the prince of the king of the universe. That's who we're made to be. But to find it out, we have to do the work. We have to go after it. We can't sit on the couch and wait for it to happen. So, my friends, Shabbat is coming. You see out here, we got a little sunlight left, but not much. And so I'm going to say goodbye. Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you next week on all the outlets. God bless you all.